Hello, friends, and welcome to The Big Show. My name is Jimmy Smith, the host of the podcast. The Big Show is where we talk about modern-day issues like men's health, masculinity, the hard truth about dating, and overall advice to help make your life just a little bit easier. Now, today is a very special episode for me personally because I have the privilege of bringing on someone that many of you guys may already know. If you are a regular watcher of the Dad Talk Today channel, then you know him all too well. Please welcome our special guest today, Eric Carroll. How are you doing, Eric?
What's up, guys? Man,
it took so long for me to finally get you on the channel, but you're finally here.
Yeah, I've been kind of in the background, still working it, still trying to get it going, just not on the camera as much.
You're a busy guy. You're always working, doing something. And also here to help me unravel Eric's life story is the man behind PissedOffParent.com, Mr. Sci-Fi himself, and the lover of all things nerd, my buddy Dwayne Ward.
I knew I smelled something.
Yeah.
Actually, who the hell is this guy? Who is he? I don't know. Like, inviting anybody on now?
Yeah, we could smell Dwayne as soon as he popped on the channel. Yeah. So Eric, after getting to know you, I was really surprised that Dad Talk Today wasn't a lifelong plan of yours. As a matter of fact, a series of letdowns and unfortunate circumstances had to happen first before the inspiration of Dad Talk Today actually took shape. So what I was thinking is before we dive into how and when Dad Talk Today began, let's start with the beginning. Let's start with your upbringing. I'm really curious to know how the story all began. Did you grow up with your parents? How was your upbringing?
I grew up in a nuclear family, so mom and dad stayed together. Son of a preacher. My dad was a preacher. I've grown up in Georgia my whole life, country boy, and yeah, man, it was a good life, growing up. I kind of missed those younger days, to be honest. But yeah, not much to say, man. Growing up in the country, had a great school, everything, and yeah, most of my memories are at church.
Yeah,
there with my dad.
So I didn't know that you were growing up as a preacher's son. I mean, how has growing up in a preacher's household how do they influence your life and your values?
So it wasn't just my dad. It was both of my granddads. My mom and dads
like
were pastors.
Generational.
Yeah, uncles, cousins. Came from a family of ministry. It was definitely different because my family was Pentecostal, and
so
my dad's mom, guys, in her whole life had never cut her hair. There's a thing like a woman's hair is her glory.
Right.
She had never wore a pair of pants. She didn't wear makeup, anything. Yep. Very, very strict background. And I'm going to tell you, growing up, I thought that was crazy. I'm not going to lie. Even though it was my own family, it's like, that's a little crazy. But she said a woman is supposed to, wear stuff that pertains to a woman, and she's not supposed to wear anything that pertains to a man. Yes. Growing up, I thought that was crazy until the last couple of years. I've looked back at it a little bit more and like, man, maybe they saw something I didn't.
They had it right. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. But yeah, that was one thing I definitely learned from my dad. As a kid, I was very resentful, in the ministry because he was always gone doing something for somebody. And as a kid, you don't really understand that. You just want to know where your dad is.
Yeah.
He was always doing something for somebody in the church. And it wasn't a big church, small country church. And that, I guess, probably added on to the resentment. I judged him by the size of the congregation.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because, I mean, dude, you're losing that time with your dad. All of us boys crave it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's like I'd much rather, instead of being at church right now, be here working on a car or learning something with you.
So your father was a preacher and your grandfather was a preacher. Did it go back earlier than that? Was your great grandfather also a preacher? Just a grandfather and your father?
Both of my grandfathers, my mom's dad and my dad's dad.
Oh, gotcha. On both sides.
Both sides, yeah. Dude.
Wow.
Yeah, both sides. They were heavily involved in the ministry. That's how my mom and dad met. They had things called revivals, and I think they met. My grandfather was preaching at my other grandfather's church, and that's where they met.
Interesting. So yeah. I imagine there was some probably push and pull, some desire or want to get you kind of involved. I mean, how How involved were you in your father's church and religious community?
Not much until I became a teenager. I was a very rebellious kid. That was one thing that it did. They talk about, the preacher's kids. I think there's a chip on your shoulder you get as a pastor's son. And not only that, all the trouble, I got into more trouble at church than anywhere else, man. I think there's something about being the preacher's kid. Let's get him in trouble so they don't look at our kids. And so they love to get me into stuff.
Yeah.
So like in Footloose, the girl from Footloose did you identify with her?
Dude, it's been so long since I've watched Footloose. I could sing the song for you, but I can't remember what went on.
Yeah,
well,
she
was. Doesn't sing it, but yeah, no, she was very resentful. Her father was she was the daughter of a preacher, and she got into all kinds of trouble with boys and smoking and drinking, and then met the bad boy Kevin Bacon, his character, and then dance moves and evolved from there. But I would say, if you probably watched that movie, you probably could identify with her quite a bit.
Yeah, I did. Dude, girls like bad boys. So I had problems with girls, but it wasn't in getting girls.
Right. Did you ever feel pressure or have expectations from your family or community because of your father's role as a preacher?
I still do. But, I got to say this, man, is, I will say when I was 16, I quit school because I was just getting into so much trouble.
Wow.
And I went and got my GED right away, even though, I had quit school. I went and got my GED. I was actually in college ministry school at 16 years old, studying to become a pastor. And I wanted my dad to be proud of me. There was never that expectation there. He never put the pressure on me. I definitely got it from other people. And of course, grandfathers and dad preachers, so they're going to expect the sons are going to follow in the footsteps. The last thing I wanted to do was be in ministry, but I did that at that point in time because I felt like I'd messed everything up until that point. I wanted something for them to be proud of.
Yeah.
But that didn't last long. I think I was only there for like 6 months, and I was like, this ain't for me. But when I would get back, I stopped going to church not long after that. And it was constantly the people that go to the church or people that knew my dad invite me to church and trying to pressure that on me. I'll never forget one day I had gotten to the point where I didn't even want anybody to pray for me, because they would push it on you. There's only so much you can be pushed.
Right.
But there was these people that came over there and was just trying to do it without me, wanting to be involved in it. I remember my dad saying, leave him alone. He never pushed it on me, man. And he didn't like other people pushing it on me, even though he was there. I guess he could kind of see, what that does. And so I always respected my dad for that.
Yeah.
I really did.
So, if you didn't follow in your footsteps of your father and your dad didn't push it on you, were there, I'm just kind of curious as to why. Was there like any aspects of your personal beliefs or your values that differed from your father's teaching or your family's religious tradition?
I have a curious mind. So I can remember like when I was in the college, I had Old Testament.
Are we still talking about women here?
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, I definitely had that too. But when I was in the college, they had Old Testament classes, and I was a part of that. I learned so much by reading the Old Testament that I had never heard before. Okay, I was like, when did this happen? There's a lot of that gets left out when people talk about religion. But even in the class, I was always asking questions. This doesn't make sense to me. Tell me this. And I could remember people would get mad at you for asking questions. Oh, you're blaspheming. You can't do that. You can't question God. I was like, I'm not questioning God. I want to understand God. Why? But it was just so closed, man. And that really ate at me. It really did, because I wanted to know. And then, I started getting very respectful of other people's stuff too. Look, man, I'm not saying, I go along with it or whatever, but you got all these different religions. Right. They believe in their God the same way you do.
Right.
And so I wanted to give them respect. I remember I have never been mean to Jehovah's Witnesses when they come and knock on the door. Because even though it gets on your nerves, man, that took a lot of dedication for them to come there and do that. They have to really believe in that, right?
And
so I respect you. It's not for me, but I respect you.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, I'm actually having kind of an issue trying to think of, Eric Young. And I think we might have maybe an image that might show his age. Let me see. Oh, here it is. Oh, look at that! Look at that!
Wow.
Okay, look at that.
Dang, that's a long time ago.
That's a long time ago. Was that like colorized, or is that black and white that you?
Yeah, that's pothead Eric right there.
Oh, we'll be getting into that later, but okay. All right.
Yeah. I was at a school. My best friend's mom, she was Native American, and she had a full regalia made up, and she would go to the schools and teach the kids about Native Americans.
Oh, okay.
And I would go with her, and that was we was at a middle school talking to some kids about the Native Americans that day. Yeah, man.
Cool.
So I've heard a few times some of my friends growing up, not many, but a few times from time to time, I either knew or heard of, children of preachers, children of people involved in the religious, beliefs of the churches and whatever. And I heard how, some of those stories, they either had a hard bringing up or it wasn't as bad. But what advice would you give to other individuals who may be navigating the complexities of growing up in a religious family? What would you say to those people?
Not to worry about what everybody thinks of you, and maybe sit down and talk to your family, ask them why they do it and everything. So I think one of the things that prepared me for Dad Talk, and I'm still not all the way there, and I never will be, but one of the things that I kind of knew going into it is the thing that got me the most as a kid. It was always the people that my dad did the most for that would come back and stab him in the back, or, talk about him because he didn't do enough.
Right.
And man, that pissed me off so bad. Like I see you talking about, look, man, I lost time with my dad because he was over there helping you and your family. And now I got to sit there and listen to this.
Good point.
And, I would beg my dad. I'd beg my dad to quit, and he would not. He said, that's not what I'm doing it for.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, it wasn't until later that I understood that. But I don't want this to sound like a bash session on the church, but I've definitely got my feelings on that, dude. It's the gossip that goes on inside of churches and the people talking about each other and stuff. There's a lot of double lives of people that go to church. They act one way when they're there, and then I know who you are afterwards, right?
One of the things allowed in the church, yeah.
Yeah, dude, the gossip is just horrible.
I've heard a few times that some of the biggest sinners are those that attend church every Sunday. I've heard that a few times, and as a matter of fact, I went to church this morning a few hours ago, and they were talking about how the pastor from time to time has to remind the congregation before they leave to be nice to each other in the parking lot. Mm-hmm. Because whenever they leave the church and they get into this parking lot, because this was a big mega church here. I mean, they've got police officers directing traffic. I mean, they must hire 8 police officers. That's how large it is. Looks like a small college, to be honest. But people are so ugly to each other, trying to get out of the parking lot of church that the pastor has to remind them to play nice. So there's certainly a whole lot of double lives and double standards and hypocrisy there, isn't there?
Well, yeah, dude, and there's so many expectations on these pastors' kids, and then they're sitting back watching all this happen, see somebody talk about their parents. Dude, nobody gets judged harder than the preacher, and he's human too.
Yeah,
I lived with him, but people unfairly judge him because he's supposed to be the pastor, and he's not doing anything that you're not doing, or making some of the same mistakes. You got to learn to kind of separate yourself and not take that too seriously, because I think that's probably where a lot of resentment comes from with, preachers' kids.
Yeah, I bet.
I wanted to ask, what are some stereotypes that people put on you as a preacher's kid? It sounded like it was a chick magnet, so there was maybe one good stereotype, but what stereotype?
It kind of was, dude. In a way, a weird way, girls like the bad boys back then. Yeah. So,
but you were a preacher's kid, so
yeah. Well,
I'm on fire for the Lord. Ooh, Johnny.
No, I mean, it wasn't me, dude. I was after the Christian college. Like you said, it only lasted so long.
Right.
I think people expect the preacher's kids to be somewhat rebellious and hellions.
Mm.
So, And that's not always the case. I know other preachers' kids that didn't go through that, but a lot of them do. A lot of them do. And then, you know, I guess they kind of judge you like they would in the preacher because you're the preacher's kids. So you're a reflection in them. And then when you get in trouble, people think that's a reflection on your dad.
Yeah.
And that sucks, dude, because I did so much to embarrass my dad. I wish I could have took it all back, man, but he did everything he could do, man. It had nothing to do with him.
Yeah. Well, when you guys were talking, it reminded me of Caleb Leverett. You know, he was a believer, and I would hope he will come back one day, not judge Christians by the number of them. But, you know, and I think a lot of people that tune into this show can empathize with this, as they would go to church and Caleb would go to church on Sunday and see the same people in church singing to Jesus. And then on Monday, they would take his kids away from him or do something, you know, bad using the courts or, you know, or just in life, you know, fighting to get out of the church parking lot or, you know, doing non-Christian type things. And yeah, it's just just kind of a bad gig there.
So let's fast forward. So let's fast forward a little bit. I'm actually interested in hearing about this rebellion. So you reach your teenage years, right? And you're out there, you're being the bad boy, you're chasing tail, you're doing your stuff, and
wow.
And well, that's kind of what I said.
Okay, we're going there.
You should go right for it. And you know, you drop out of high school. You try to do the religious church school thing. You don't follow through with that. I mean, tell me about the, you know, rebellious teenager stage. I mean, describe some conflicts or misunderstandings that arose between you and your family during those times that you were going through that rebellion stage.
How long's the podcast?
I think the number one my dad would bring up is getting brought back by the cops at 4:00 in the morning, where I had snuck out of my window to go meet a girl down the road and got caught.
Yeah, that would be a conflict and misunderstanding, wouldn't it?
That was one. Yeah, for sure.
Prayer time went a little long that night.
Well, yeah. Even before, you know, teenage years, dude, I think I started messing around with cigarettes around 7, 8 years old.
Really?
And yeah. And I did a pretty good job at hiding it. But, dude, I got most of my cigarettes from the people I went to church with.
Wow.
So, you know, it's just one of the things. But that was about as far as it went. It was girls and cigarettes until I got out of high school. Then I started experimenting with drinking and some of the other stuff. But girls was probably one of my biggest Achilles heel. I loved them. It's all I thought about. And I think a lot of us guys can probably relate to that, but it's
mini Ted Nugent.
Yeah, it started early, man. 11, 12 years old. I started noticing the girls' anatomy and everything. I became a very big admirer of it. And it was what I thought about all day long.
And that was before the internet. That was before, you know, I mean, now you can turn on the internet and you can see a pair of boobs at snap of a finger. I remember being that age because we're not too different from each other in age. And I remember, you know, like looking under the mattress to try to find one of my parents' Playboy magazines, and you know, looking at the magazine and tearing it out and then folding it up and running to the all the neighborhood kids. And I'm like, Jimmy's got a pair of boobs. He's got a torn out of boobs.
Dude.
And we would go into the woods and where no one can see us, and we're like, whoa.
Brought up a good story. All right.
I got a story too.
You just brought up a good story because this sounds so crazy, but my brother can confirm it. All right. With my dad having a country church out in the middle of nowhere, they didn't come and pick up your trash every week. We had to like drive down the road, and there was like a dumpster site that you would throw the trash in.
Oh, wow.
My brother's 10 years older than me too, by the way. So one night we go, and I heard my brother go, "Oh my God." I go over there. This is no exaggeration, guys. There was a dumpster slap full of nothing but Playboys, and they look brand spanking new.
Baby.
Dude, spanking? Did you say spanking new?
12 years old now, and my brother's got 10 years on me, so he was not going to let me get this, and I was about to go crazy. Like, I've never had an opportunity like this. But there was a man standing next to him that saw it, and he started talking to my brother. And I was like, dude, what am I going to do? He is not going to let me take these things. But there was that centermate or that Playmate centerfold. And I ripped it out, folded it up, put it in my back pocket, and I was like, yes, dude.
Yeah, baby.
Well,
no more Sears catalog.
I should have cherished that thing, and I should have hit it, because what happened is the next day I thought I was going to take it to school and show off. So next day we have a pep rally. The whole school is in the gym. And I got my buddy sitting beside me. I was like, hey, check this out. And I go to unfold it. Right as the time I get ready to unfold it, I hear my coach go, Eric Carroll. And I started fumbling and trying. He's like, no, bring it here.
No.
Doing everything I could.
Oh, that's Miss June.
Dude, I get down there in front of the whole school. He unravels that and does this. He's like, go to the office. I was like, oh my God. So we get to the office and the principal is just going off on me. She was like, where did you get this? I got it in a dumpster. If you're going to keep lying, you're going to get more trouble. I was like, I promise. I got it in a dumpster. Finally, they called my mom and was telling her the crazy story. My brother heard it. He's like, he's telling the truth. But yeah, I got caught with the centerfold in front of the whole school. Sucks.
Oh, Eric Clark says those things will be worth a fortune now.
It was worth a fortune to me back then, brother.
Oh, yeah.
The next time I got one, I kept it in a cooler out in the woods so it wouldn't get rained on.
Man, you remember the company called Finger Hut?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And they would send you the books, like a little book, and then you open up an account and you order whatever you want. Mm-hmm. And man, me and my little brother would take my mom's Finger Hut books and we'd go to the girl bra section because they're modeling the bras, and that was our pornography back then.
It was J.C. Penney for me, brother. J.C.
Penney.
Yeah.
Sears catalog and J.C. Penney.
How far we've fallen since then.
I mean, even now, dude, if you want to sit down and you're going to the bathroom, you got to do it number 2. You know, we used to have to read the back of cans and see what all the ingredients was. Now they got these doggone cell phones. I'm jealous.
I know, man.
I know. Easy
kids
access.
don't know how well they've got it.
So you go from a well-known preacher's son to this rebellious teenager, right? I'm curious to know, like, how did the friendships that you were talking about, the social interactions from the church, how do they influence your decisions?
Poorly.
I mean, it sounds like they weren't exactly pushing you into the church. They were kind of pushing you away from it. I mean, when the people from the church are the ones actually buying you cigarettes, when they're looking at you and they're kind of pulling you away because a preacher's son is the rebellion bad boy, I mean, it doesn't sound like there was a whole lot of positive energy going your way. I mean, but you tell me, I mean, how did everyone knowing who you were take you from where you were to where you were the time you were going through?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, dude, because there was things I wouldn't have got a hold of. I mean, I had one that would buy my cigarettes, alcohol, and all that. Started at a, young teenage age, but when in church, like the perfect person, right? So my parents trusted him, and that was just me. I knew who to go off with to get what I wanted. And I started making poor choices because I had access to things that I wouldn't. I mean, and dude, I think another thing that, I've definitely got to explain too, where I'm from, there was no kids my age. It was nothing but woods. So boring. We didn't have the cell phones. A lot of the boredom got me into trouble too, because I wanted to just be anywhere else. We had 4 TV stations, and if you didn't get in your cartoons when they played, you weren't going to get them. So, and I've watched the same VHS tapes, over and over and over. But I just want to say too, my dad had some great people at the church. But I knew the ones that I could get in trouble with. And dude, even the girls that would come to the church. I mean,
did you was there anything that you wish that your parents would understood better about your perspective? I mean, is there anything they could have done, or like what would you have wanted them to understand more about you?
Back then, that was all I would talk about, was like how they didn't understand and how we was on different wavelengths. Now that I've gotten older and can comprehend it, they had a rough upbringing. Well, I don't want to say rough, but they had a very strict upbringing. My dad had never tasted alcohol in his life, and he was in the military. My mom was the same way. I remember one time I played in a rock and roll band, and I had just started discovering marijuana, and my band was playing. It was really loud, and my mom came to my house to tell us that we needed to turn it down because the whole neighborhood could hear us. And I've got a bag of marijuana sitting right there and the bong right beside it. And the whole house was filled with it. And she's sitting there looking right at it. And she's like, you better not be doing drugs. I'm like, Mama, I swear to God, I'm not. I'm not. It's right there in front of her face. She never knew. We laugh about it now, but she was so sheltered. Both of them. My dad got out a little bit more because of his service years, but so
she's like, why do you have oregano on the table? What are
you guys cooking?
Yeah, so it was definitely I know it had its challenges, and they did the best they could for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One question that I get asked from time to time whenever I do podcasts and shows, or whenever I help people on a consultation standpoint with dating and relationship advice and things like that, is I get asked, are you married? Me personally. And I tell them that I'm not, I'm divorced, right? And so from time to time, and they're being nice about it, they're not being rude, but they'll ask me sometimes, how can you find yourself giving advice to those to become married or stay married when you yourself are now divorced? And it's a fair question, it really is. But here's my answer to questions like that. And what you went through kind of reminds me of this, and I'll draw a straight line to the point here in a second. But when people go through challenges in life, adversity, those are the times that I think that people grow the most from. If you were to ask people, what do you learn most from, your successes or your failures? I would think that most people would say I learned more from my failures, things Absolutely. That when I fell down and I had to pick myself up. I say that to say this, you had an opportunity where that road could have led you to the left or to the right, right? You could have went into the business with your father, preach the word of God for the rest of your life, or you could have taken your own path despite how your parents would have felt about it, knowing there may have been a little disappointment there should you not have followed that path, and you chose that path. So I guess my next question would be like, if you could offer advice to parents or adults who are dealing with rebellious teenagers, what would it be? And I ask that question knowing that you have a good perspective of it, because at that time when you were rebellious, you would have given a different answer than now at a different age, you being an adult. So you have both perspectives. If someone was going through a situation where their teenager was being rebellious, what would you tell them when they're dealing with that?
Because of Dad Talk, it's gave me a different outlook on that. I know what I want the answer to be versus the answer that I can give you. Is a lot of these guys that are going through this, that aren't able to see their kids, or that's going through this alienation, especially when they become teenagers. They are teenagers. They're going to want to do things. They're going to want to make mistakes just like all of us did. Yep. And if they got a parent over there that's saying, hey, you can do it, and you're a dad saying, no, you can't, there's going to be times where, that if you give this answer, it's going to upset your kid and it's going to push them more to the other side. But fellas, you got to remain dad. You hear me? Yes. They might not understand it now, but one day they will. You've got to remain dad. And I found myself in that situation. And it's not easy. It is not easy. At the same time,